Let's give them a round of applause.
Hi guys, my name's Ashley.
I'm Holly.
I'm Cholley. I'm Brittany.
So here we've been given a few articles to talk to you guys about charisma and its role in immediacy behaviors. So we wanted to open up by firstly defining charisma. Charisma is the ability to communicate a clear, visionary, and inspirational message that captivates and motivates an audience. So before we start talking about it, we just wanted to open up with a fun video of a nonverbal presentation of charisma, what that can look like.
Well, I would like to celebrate my first dance of the day with you right now.
Amigo. Okay. So, Ellen, right? She is a huge example. She's a great example of charisma. She is the epitome of the abilities that prove that you can learn to be charismatic. So our thesis follows the general thesis of the research we were presented, which is that charisma is not something that you just have or you don't have. Charisma is not at all an innate skill. It is a learnable skill, or rather a set of skills that have been practiced since antiquity. Charisma is influence. Charisma is the ability to influence those around you. So there are a few examples of nonverbal and verbal ways to practice your charisma techniques. We've listed a couple of them here. Verbal contrasts, analogies, and rhetorical questions. So analogies, metaphors, similes, that gives a very clear, vivid message to the people you're speaking to. And rhetorical questions can encourage engagement with the people that you're speaking with. You'll notice that Ellen does a lot of that as well if you've ever watched any of her interviews. Contrast, kind of like when you say, as opposed to, while you're talking about something. And it gives someone a huge image of the thing that you're talking about, the position that you're working with, so that you've really clarified where you stand in the discussion that you're leading. Some nonverbals are an animated voice, low inflections and high inflections, when you're able to create a range of vocal habits there whenever you're speaking to someone. That's also really engaging for someone who's listening to you. Facial expressions, and not just making the same facial expression the entire time, whether that's a happy expression or not, like letting people know that you are also emotionally involved with things that you're speaking about, allows other people to feel like you do the same thing. Gestures, though sometimes a bit overwhelming, also very necessary to communicating a clear and effective message charismatically. And so finally what I wanted to bring up was that our article mentioned these three aspects of integrity, authority, and passion. Oh my. And we have a quote that says, "Passion cannot emerge unless the leader truly believes that the vision and strategic goal can be reached." So Ellen always exemplifies that attitude, that whatever they're talking about, they're going to figure out, they've got an answer to like the debate that they have. It's like she's got a vision and she's just taking you along with it. And other charismatic leaders such as President Obama some famous people in our past, like Martin Luther King Jr., have a dream, have an image that we're all working towards, and to be able to effectively communicate that is to discuss it verbally, non-verbally, and passionately. So we are going to start with a role play that kind of gives a good example of some do's and don'ts in charisma. Oh my God, sorry. Are you nervous?
I am so nervous.
Yeah, I thought, just don't be though. We've been studying for months.
Yeah,
We've got most questions, I think, multiple questions.
Hi, you're not Ashley. No, I'm Cholley.
Hi,
Hi.
nice to meet you.
Yeah, well, I came to the class at the beginning of the semester and I got really sick, so I had to skip a lot of classes. But I have doctor's notes for all of it, so it's okay. Yeah. But when I am here, I just kind of float around and yeah.
Well, our friend Ashley usually sits there. She's been studying with us like crazy all month.
Oh,
Did you know there's a midterm today?
today there's a midterm?
Yeah, midterms today. Like she should be hearing it.
No, I didn't know. Are you guys studying right now?
We've been studying.
Yeah, we've been studying.
Can I study with you guys real quick? Can I jump in with you guys?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
You're
Hi.
welcome to.
Are you in the right class? Yeah, this is Spanish, right? Yeah, I remember seeing you here. I normally sit there. Oh, I was just telling them I got really sick at the beginning of the semester, so I had to miss a lot. But when I am here, I kind of just float around wherever I'm comfortable. Well, you can float your way to the back of the class. This is my seat, and today's the midterm. If you didn't know, which you probably don't know because you're never here. So I would like to study with my friends, please. Well, we're studying, so you can jump in with us if you want.
Okay.
This was obviously an example of bad being charismatic, and I should have, just pulled up a chair and studied with them. It wouldn't have been a big deal. We could have made those connections, and some of the CLTs she was talking about, I could have been more open and listened to her and that kind of a thing. I don't know if you guys could see my face, but I was giving her puppy dog eyes the whole time, and I was being super open. My body language was positive, even though she was coming at me why are you sitting in my seat? I didn't care, and so obviously it wasn't bothering me, but it was bothering her, and so the oppositions of tone and body language was very apparent. Let's see, I should do this, shouldn't I? And just to reiterate what Holly was talking about earlier, with animated voice, when people are passionate about things, they naturally have an inflection. And so if you're listening to somebody who's very monotone and they're talking they don't really know, anything other than this, they're obviously not very passionate, or they don't know a lot about the subject, so they feel nervous. And when people are nervous, they reserve themselves more. And so with reserve comes a reduction in inflection, in tone, and in the exuberance of how you present whatever you're speaking of. Facial expressions, this correlates with charisma, because when somebody's charismatic, there's a lot of eye contact, there's a lot of smiling, there's a lot of just raised eyebrows and things that make people drawn into you. And as I was saying the other day, I like eye contact, and I'm a very, I think that eye contact is one of the strongest connections that somebody can have. And Nate said that he thinks too much eye contact is creepy. So obviously we have to find a balance of eye contact and all of the facial expressions, because if there's not, then you can go one way or the other. And I think that comes in moderation and learning how to control yourself and read others to see if others are reading you in a positive or negative way. Finally, with gestures, as Holly was saying, when people are too big and they're too in your face, it comes off overbearing. And sometimes you retreat from whatever they're saying, and if you're in an office and if there's a set amount of space and somebody's very in your face, you don't know what to do, and you're okay. And so that kind of pulls you away from whatever you're thinking of. You're not thinking about the actual thing, you're thinking of how overbearing this person is. And it can draw you away from the subject matter itself. And so I think that goes along with moderating yourself and knowing what your body is doing. That's very important.
And so to add to the gestures, there are some examples of, when we talk about Ellen and she's in that large space, she's able to use those grand gestures and they're not intimidating, in the kind of interviewing setting that she can have, she can be very grandiose. There are a lot of of examples like that. In our text, it listed 12 CLTs that I forgot to write down what they meant, what that stands for. These were several tips and guidelines to help people offer more charismatic attitude. An interesting statistic that we found was 65% of people who use the CLTs get above average ratings, as opposed to the people who don't use those CLTs only get 35% of them get like above average ratings. So it significantly increases your ability to come off as charismatic. As well as the CLTs, also being able to use logos, ethos, pathos, and your influential trait. I don't know if any of you are familiar. I learned about it in Comp 2, but ethos would be considered the information and the tact that you can offer that allows people to regard you as someone with emotional ability, someone, I have a really good word, moral credibility is the way the text defined it. So being able to be on that personal aspect. Logos is having that communicative ability to use effectively statistics and fact in your thesis whenever you're talking to someone about the vision that you have. And finally, pathos is just the general ability to persuade and to sway people with their passions, using emotions for those followers. And there are a lot of times where that's appropriate and inappropriate, which kind of brings us next to our email contact section.
Okay. Whenever you're sending an email, it can come across like inaccurate. People read things and get one word. They might have different meanings for them. So whenever you're sending an email, you need to think of like the way it can be interpreted. And if it is being interpreted wrong, you can first you should always reread your email. And then whenever you find something that can be interpreted wrong, try to rephrase it. And if you still think like they might not know, you can always just go down to their office or make a phone call. And if you if you receive an email and you're like replying back and you're just furious, like you're mad about what they said, step away, like think about how you can say it in a nice way and don't send it right off the bat. Make sure your emails are clear, the 3 C's, which are clear, crisp, and concise. The article talked about if you're vulnerable, it can help you like connect to people more. So don't feel bad about like letting someone know what's happening in your life, because that can be a way that you can make a greater connection with the person. This doesn't like to work.
Alright, so in conclusion, reread your emails before you send them. Charisma is not innate, you can learn it. It's never too late. Never too late to learn charisma. Always follow the 12 CLTs.
Which stand for charismatic leadership traits.
Thank you.
If you're curious.
Thank you. And we talked a little bit about the do's and don'ts. And ethos, logos, pathos, that's always something that you can continue to study. That's not something that you know as well. And that's
Do you guys have any questions for us? Perfect.
Oh,
So where's that line that you draw between like stepping in on just going in and saying, hey, about that email you sent, or introducing or interrupting someone's time, like we had talked about in.
Well, Dr. Miller offered a really great strategy for that, which is if you think that what you have to talk about needs to be talked about verbally, set up an appointment to talk about it verbally. So something that you can always do, and I know I use daily, is I'd rather call you and talk to you about this. Call me whenever you have a free minute. Or saying, can I come by before your lunch to bring that up, so we could go over what happened with that customer, things like that. So just letting a person know that it's valuable to you to discuss this verbally rather than over an email. I know I've had situations with my roommates where it's been like that, outside of the workforce, where, hey, can we talk about this in person? So just offering yourself up to be accessible in person, not just over email, is probably the best way to draw that line.
also, I think, very important before you decide to make an action of being curious about the way someone said something in an email. Put yourself in their position. Try and think of what they're doing right now. Maybe you have no idea, but maybe kind of think, okay, this person is a pretty easygoing person. Maybe they didn't mean it like that.